Super Mario RPG is finally coming to the Switch this weekend. Is it worth a pickup, or has the slow degradation of time eaten away at it too much for it to make a comeback? Hello and welcome to Switch Scheme. I was lucky enough to play this game early due to a shipment mistake by a certain company whose name I'll keep to myself, but I cannot wait to talk about it. And judging by the release of everyone else's review this morning, I take it the embargo is released. But first, let's get the formalities out of the way. If you enjoyed my content, please drop a like and sub. Will you be picking up this game at launch? Let me know in the comments. With that said, let's take a jump into one of Mushroom Kingdom's most unique adventures, taking a look at the story, gameplay, music and sounds, as well as the overall value for your dollar. The story of Mario RPG is pretty wild. It begins as most Mario games do, with Peach needing to be rescued by Mario because Bowser just can't leave her alone. Well, Mario succeeds, but amidst his rescue efforts, a giant sword falls from the sky, plummeting the world into chaos, sending our titular heroes far across the world only to fall isolated once again. Mario must traverse familiar and new areas to try and not only locate all his friends, while meeting new ones, but also defeat this new threat. He needs to collect 7 star pieces in order to fix a pretty important piece of infrastructure, and it's bizarre. And it's really gonna stand out if you're a regular in this universe. On the story front, my favorite part, beyond the crazy premise, is actually the humor. It was really funny. It wasn't so much cringe as it was dark, and it legit got a few chuckles out of me. This is a huge plus, as often humor in games falls flat and usually feels pretty forced, but here it stands out. The story will take you on average 10 to 12 hours to complete depending on your rate of play, but it's a nice length overall. Mario RPG was developed by Square, so it has a very strong turn-based early Square Enix game feel to it. Each character takes a turn, does their attack, and then the next character goes, and so on. There's no action meters or break meters or anything like that. Although these meters and things from later RPGs are missing, the game does have a really cool power move that you can use where all 3 party members coordinate together to do some major damage. The best part of this being that they're accompanied by a really cool in-game cutscene that showcases the power being unleashed. Where the combat differs though are the time-sensitive button hits that can either power up an attack or prevent some damage. If you time your presses correctly, you can do additional AoE damage and enjoy a stronger hit, or in the case of defenses, you can even outright prevent everything, taking nothing in return. It is very satisfying, and each weapon in battle has its own timing window, which will take some time to learn. Unfortunately though, the game is very linear in its acquisition of these weapons, so you'll go through them at a steady rate, and you never really have a reason to go back to something you were more familiar with. Each new area may provide new weapons and armor, in almost every case it's going to be a substantial upgrade. So there's no reason to try and save, say, a pot from one world because the stick in this world is going to be much stronger and everything else gets power crept to oblivion. This sadly means that the upgrade paths that a party member can take doesn't really allow for much customization, since you always just use the next best thing. It isn't that big of a deal, but it is really unfortunate that there is a lack of choice here. On the gameplay front as well, I will say that the battles were easy. Very easy. And except for some bosses, the challenge just isn't there. The boss encounters, however, like I said, do make up for some of that shortcomings due to their unique mechanics. One boss clones your party members, while another will completely nullify some of your buttons. The mix of platforming and RPG combat is also a neat take on a Mario game. You'll be jumping from platform to platform, grabbing coins while you traverse the overworld, and doing very Mario-like things, but it will switch to turn-based combat on a whim when you come in contact with an enemy. It keeps traversing that environment actually pretty fun, and speaking of environments, this is another strong point. There are so many places to go and see in this game that you will never feel like one zone overstays its welcome, so you're constantly seeing new stuff, which makes you want to see what's next. Now there is some menu lag that I experienced, and I looked around and I watched a few other reviews to see if it was just me, but even someone like IGN also reported it, so I assume it's not an isolated incident. I hope that this will be a day 1 patch fix, but we'll have to see. In general though, the gameplay is smooth, and honestly, if you're here for Mario RPG, that's what you'll get. The music is one of the most exciting upgrades to a classic soundtrack I've heard in a long time. It's faithful to the original while also being absolutely perfect as a modern take. I don't really have much more praise that I can give it. It's a 10 out of 10 in the music front for me. But don't take my word for it, listen to this. The value here is debatable in my opinion, and it will depend on your playstyle and preference when it comes to completion. The campaign will take on average 10 to 12 hours, which sounds fine on paper, but the overall linear feel to the story and upgrades, as well as the difficulty being pretty lax, it may not resonate with everyone. The good news is they did include some post-game content which will keep you engaged, such as alternate takes on certain fights that up the difficulty, as well as the ability to run around the overworld and work on your collectibles, which is nice if you're into that sort of completionism. For me though, I'm not. I usually play a game through the story, I might veer off here for a side quest or two, but I've never been one who needs to collect everything, so that's a moot point for me. However, considering the original SNES game will cost you on average $80 to $100, let alone the cost of getting an SNES that works, I think I'll gladly drop $60 here to enjoy an updated rendition of this game. Overall, Mario RPG is a phenomenal update to a classic, and much like the Link to the Past update we received earlier, it really fits among the collection as a cute, bright, and colorful game to play when you need to smile. The humor hits and the gameplay is engaging due to the time-sensitive combat. I found the game a bit too easy, and the extremely linear take on the story and upgrades kind of reduced my urge for replays, but I can promise that after a few months, I'll likely jump back into it and play it again because it was a lot of fun and it was, like I said, pretty funny. If you enjoy RPGs or you just want to experience Mario at one of his quirkiest moments, then definitely grab Mario RPG for your Switch.